My name is Justin Blanchard. I was born in Laverne, California, to a very loving mom and dad. I was raised without need of anything. I grew up in a good home. My dad became a pastor when I was 12 years old, and I would say that I grew up knowing the Lord the entire time. I was raised in the ways of God. My childhood was one of peace, one of love. I really can't fault my mom and dad for the things that came in the future. When I was 13, I just had a youthful curiosity, a foolish curiosity. And by the time I got to high school, I wanted to try drugs. I wanted to try anything I could find. And then I wanted to know what every other drug was like. I was an instant addict from the time that I first tried any sort of mind-altering substance. I never got to the point where I could overcome things normally the longer that I used drugs. And so the drugs become the only way that you do cope. And I would say right about that point is when my addiction started taking over, and I was no longer in control because I was lost. I was lost. By the time I was out of high school, by the time I was 18, I was a full-blown meth addict. I myself was in a worldly relationship that led to a failed marriage. The only good thing that came out of it was it produced my daughter. We had my daughter Lily in 2013. And so in 2013, I began to see very clearly that I needed to get off drugs. I mean, before she was born, I tried to stop opiates a couple times, but I couldn't. Basically, the police came over like 17 times and my daughter got taken away. And that is the moment that broke me. At that stage, I watched my daughter get taken away in a car. The day she was taken away, her mom never came home. And I descended into alcoholism that will kill you. And so I was drinking a fifth to a gallon a day. At this point, I was just around all of her toys in a house alone. It went on like that for about a month or two, and then I was evicted out of that condo, and then I was homeless. And that's kind of what happens when you're homeless. After about a year, you get institutionalized, you start to think differently, act differently, and generally you become hopeless. My mom and dad were in the process of adopting my daughter, so they weren't able to help me at all, really, because, I mean, they would help me with little things, like they would give me a blanket, or they might give me some food, or they might let me come in the house and take a shower every, once a month or something like that. But for the most part, they had given me up to my own devices. I just was thinking, like, is this how it all ends? I took a bus on Thanksgiving Day to my mom and dad's house. They let me stay over one night, and they're like, you got to go the next day. And so what ended up happening was that next day came around, and he said, I got to take you wherever you want to go, but you can't stay here another night. You know that was the agreement. He drops me off at the store, and he takes off. And I'm going in my backpack, about to call people that I shouldn't, and he pulls back up. And it surprised me, and he rolled the window down and he said, get in the car. And it always struck me as very odd, because my dad was very much so done with me, but he gotten to the point where he wouldn't even give me a blanket. And so here he is picking me up and taking me home, right? To live at home. And so A few months later, he told me why, and he said that the Holy Spirit of God spoke to him more than he'd ever felt in his entire life, that I was going to die. If he didn't pick me up, I was going to die. And so he obeyed. And that started my journey to the Lord. That started my healing process. That started the time when I started getting clean. I was white-knuckling sobriety, and I was unhappy with being sober. And over time, I began to fantasize about using again, which was always my pattern. And so one night, in January of 2021, I was gonna call a drug dealer for drugs. And instead I went to bed and I prayed a prayer. God, if you are real, I want what all these people that supposedly know you have, like joy, like purpose, like contentment in life, peace. I want to be able to raise my daughter. I want to be able to be a father to her. And if you're there, I'm challenging you to show yourself to me, to reveal yourself to me, because I am done and I need your strength. I was just ready and broken and in full submission to God. And so the next day when I woke up, everything was different. I experienced something that day that I could truly say was, and to this day, is the Holy Spirit inside of my heart. I had asked him to apply what he did on the cross to my ledger, and my ledger was big. My list of sins against me was so big. The things that I had done over the years were weighing heavily upon me. And I just couldn't get out from underneath that weight. And the next day, the weight of my daughter, losing my daughter, the weight of being a terrible husband, an awful human being, living only for my own selfish desires, treating my body as a temple of pleasure. You know, all these things that I had done to waste literal decades of my life had been forgiven. 1 in 10 fathers that lose their children ever come back into their children's lives. And I would say that the difference between me and the other 9 is Jesus. And so if you have addiction in your life, if you have brokenness in your life, then go to the healer. Christ did the work on the cross. You put your faith in him, and you will overcome the enemy, whatever enemy that may be. So now I have purpose, I have love, I have restoration of all my relationships, I have joy. I can wake up in the morning and all day long until bedtime be content in who I am without having to alter my consciousness.
It's a joy for me today to confess to you all that I want to be like my son. A few years ago, I couldn't say that. A few years ago, I lived in fear of losing him. But now the Lord has redeemed. The Lord has changed his heart, changed him as a person. I want to have a heart of dedication to the Lord like he has. I want to be the Christian man that he has become. But the change and the transformation, the difference that Jesus has made in your life is just completely amazing.
Life can be brutal. And addiction is brutal. A lot of people with addiction are mending wounds the wrong way. They don't know a better way. And they're stuck in a feedback loop of their own mistakes.
If you are broken and you give your full heart to Christ and turn from sin, you will experience something that is so unbelievable and have a transformation that will last for all eternity.
My answer to addicts is Christ.